Have you ever seen a man celebrate his victory 5 minutes too early? Peter Calloway stood in the center of the ballroom, holding a glass of vintage Dom Perignon, laughing as he showed off his 22-year-old supermodel fiancée to the sharks of Wall Street. He had everything: the company, the penthouse, and the girl. He thought his ex-wife was broken, crying in a studio apartment somewhere in Queens. But then the doors opened, the music stopped, and when Michael walked in, she wasn't alone, and she certainly wasn't broken. She was 7 months pregnant, dripping in diamonds, and holding the arm of the one man Peter was terrified to cross. This is the story of how a discarded wife didn't just get even. She took everything. The chandeliers inside the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel in New York City didn't just sparkle. They judged. This was the annual Aurora Gala, an event where a table cost $50,000 and the net worth in the room could bail out a small European country. Peter Calloway adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo. At 34, he was the golden boy of Manhattan real estate. He had a jawline that could cut glass and a conscience that had been surgically removed years ago. "Babe, stop fidgeting," Sienna whispered, leaning into him. She was wearing a crimson Versace gown that was little more than silk, held together by hope and double-sided tape. Sienna Vane, the cover girl of Vogue last month, the trophy Peter had won after discarding his starter wife. "I'm not fidgeting," Peter smiled, flashing his veneers at a passing photographer. "I'm surveying my kingdom." He took a sip of his scotch. It was a good night. His stock was up 12%. The merger with the Kensington Group was all but signed, and the divorce papers, the ones that stripped Michael of any claim to his future earnings, were finalized as of yesterday morning. "Peter, my boy!" a booming voice echoed. It was Harold Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Bank. "Harold," Peter shook the older man's hand firmly. "You've met Sienna?" Harold's eyes lingered a moment too long on Sienna's neckline before nodding. "Charmed. Listen, Peter, I heard a rumor about the Hudson Yards project." "Ironclad," Peter lied smoothly. "We break ground in June." "Good, because with the market this volatile, you don't want any skeletons in the closet." "I have no skeletons, Harold," Peter laughed, clutching Sienna's waist. "I took out the trash months ago." He was talking about Michael. Michael, the woman who had supported him when he was a junior analyst living on ramen noodles, the woman who typed his briefs at 3 a.m., the woman he had grown bored of because she preferred reading books to snorting cocaine in bathroom stalls, and because she wore cardigans instead of couture. When he left her, he was cruel. He told her she was spiritually exhausting. He told her she didn't fit his aesthetic anymore. He gave her the apartment in Brooklyn, the one with the leaky roof, and a check for $50,000 to start over, while he kept the portfolio and the Hampton estate. "I bet she's watching the gala on Instagram right now," Sienna giggled, sipping her champagne. "Poor thing. Do you think she ever found a job?" "I don't care," Peter said, checking his Rolex. "She's the past. You, my dear, are the future." The orchestra swelled, playing a waltz. Peter felt invincible. He had traded a Honda for a Ferrari. He had won. But the universe has a funny way of balancing the books. At the far end of the ballroom, the massive double oak doors, usually kept closed to keep the riffraff out, began to creak open. It wasn't the tentative opening of a waiter bringing more hors d'oeuvres. It was a wide, deliberate opening. A hush started at the back of the room. It spread like a contagion, moving from table to table. The clinking of silverware stopped. The gossip ceased. Even the string quartet faltered, the cellist missing a beat. Peter frowned, looking over Harold Sterling's shoulder. "What is going on?" "I don't know," Harold muttered, adjusting his glasses. but someone just made an entrance. Peter turned around, and his glass of scotch slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Standing in the archway, framed by the golden light of the hallway, was Michael. But it wasn't the Michael he remembered. The Michael he knew wore messy buns and paint-stained oversized shirts. This woman was a celestial event. She was wearing a custom, floor-length gown in midnight blue velvet, designed to hug every curve. And there were curves, specifically, a very prominent, undeniable curve at her midsection. She was heavily pregnant, at least 7 months. Her hair, usually a frizzy brown, was now a sleek cascade of chestnut silk resting on her shoulders. Her skin glowed with something that wasn't just highlighter. It was the radiance of someone who has ascended. Around her neck sat a choker of sapphires and diamonds that looked suspiciously like the Romanov collection, jewelry worth more than Peter's entire fiscal year. Isn't that your ex-wife?" Sienna whispered, her voice losing its playful lilt. Peter couldn't speak. His eyes were glued to her stomach. Pregnant? How? When? They hadn't slept together in the last 6 months of their marriage. It was mathematically impossible for that child to be his. But the shock of her pregnancy was instantly eclipsed by the shock of who she was holding on to. Her hand rested delicately on the forearm of a man who made Peter Calloway look like a valet driver. He was tall, standing over 6'3", with silver fox hair and a beard trimmed to geometric perfection. He wore a tuxedo that wasn't just black. It was a void of crushed velvet and silk. His eyes were dark, scanning the room with the predatory calm of a lion entering a petting zoo. "Oh my God," Harold Sterling gasped beside Peter. "That's Dominic Rostover." Peter felt the blood drain from his face. Dominic Rostover, the Iron Tsar, the owner of Rostover Dynamics, the largest private aviation and defense conglomerate in the world, the man who supposedly had a direct line to the White House and the Kremlin. He was worth $40 billion. He didn't attend charity galas. He bought the hotels they were hosted in. "What is she doing with him?" Peter choked out. Michael and Dominic began to walk into the room. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Camera flashes erupted, a blinding stroboscope of white light. Michael didn't flinch. She smiled, a cool, serene smile that didn't reach her eyes. They moved through the room with a terrifying grace. Dominic kept his hand protectively over Michael's hand on his arm, occasionally leaning down to whisper something in her ear that made her laugh softly. "She looks expensive," Sienna said, her jealousy leaking out. "Who got her pregnant? The old guy?" Peter's mind was racing. Michael? With Rostover? It made no sense. Michael was a freelance graphic designer. She liked pottery and rescue dogs. How did she cross paths with a man who built fighter jets? The couple was heading straight for the VIP table. Peter's table. Peter wanted to run. He wanted to hide under the tablecloth. But he was frozen. Dominic stopped 3 feet away from Peter. Up close, the man radiated power. He smelled of oud wood and money. Michael turned her gaze to Peter. There was no anger in her eyes, no sadness, just a polite, devastating indifference. "Hello, Peter," she said. Her voice was smoother than he remembered. "You've got a little scotch on your shoe." Peter looked down. He had forgotten he dropped the glass. He looked like an idiot. "Michael," Peter stammered, trying to regain his composure. He straightened his jacket. You look different." "Pregnancy does that," she said, resting a hand on her bump. "Who is the father?" Sienna blurted out, unable to help herself. The silence that followed was deafening. Dominic Rostover slowly turned his head to look at Sienna. He looked at her, the way a human looks at a particularly annoying mosquito. "I believe," Dominic said, his voice a deep baritone that vibrated in Peter's chest. "That is a question for family. And since you are merely the current entertainment, I don't see how it concerns you." Sienna gasped, her face turning pink. "Now, wait a minute." Peter stepped forward, feigning bravery. "You can't speak to my fiancée like that." Dominic looked at Peter. He didn't blink. "I can speak however I please, Mr. Calloway, especially since I just bought the mortgage on this building this morning. Technically, you're standing in my living room." The people at the nearby tables audibly gasped. "Peter," Michael said softly, drawing attention back to her. "We didn't come here to cause a scene. We came to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" Peter snapped. "Your sugar daddy?" Dominic's eyes narrowed. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Careful, boy," Dominic warned. "Michael is the chairwoman of the Rostova Foundation." And he paused, sliding a protective arm around Michael's waist, pulling her flush against him. "She is my wife." The word wife hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "Wife?" Peter laughed nervously. "That's impossible. Our divorce was only finalized yesterday. You can't be married." "We married in the Seychelles this morning," Dominic said calmly. "Private jet. It cuts down on the commute." Peter felt dizzy. He looked at Michael. She wasn't just some pregnant ex. She was Mrs. Dominic Rostova. She was now, by marriage, one of the wealthiest women on the planet. "But the baby," Peter stammered. He did the math again. "You're 7 months along. We were still married 7 months ago." He saw the panic in Sienna's eyes. If the baby was Peter's, this complicated everything. But if the baby was Peter's, why was she with Dominic? Michael stepped closer. She looked at Peter with a pity that hurt more than hatred. "Do you remember the night of your 33rd birthday, Peter?" she asked quietly. Peter blinked. Of course, he had spent it in Vegas with his business partners, which included Sienna, though Michael wasn't supposed to know that. He had come home 3 days later. "I stayed home," Michael continued. "I had made a dinner. You didn't show up. I drove to your office to surprise you, thinking you were working late. You weren't there. But your laptop was open." Peter's throat went dry. "I saw the emails, Peter. I saw the bookings for the suite at the Bellagio. I saw the messages to Sienna. Peter started. "I didn't leave that night," she said. "I went to a bar, the King Cole Bar, actually. I sat there, drinking club soda, crying my eyes out, and a man sat next to me. He didn't try to hit on me. He just handed me a handkerchief and asked if the guy was worth the mascara." She looked up at Dominic and smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "I told him no. We talked for 6 hours. About art, about politics, about how much I hated the Hamptons. He listened. He didn't check his phone once. At the end of the night, he gave me his card and told me if I ever needed a job or an escape, to call him." "So you cheated on me?" Peter accused, trying to flip the narrative. "You slept with him while we were married." "I didn't sleep with him that night," Michael said firmly. "I went home. I tried to make it work with you for 2 more months, but you were so absent. And then, the night you told me I was boring and asked for a separation, I packed my bags and ran to Daddy Warbucks here," Sienna sneered. "I went to apply for a job," Michael corrected. "Dominic needed a head of design for his philanthropic wing. I got the job on my own merit. But yes, we fell in love. Fast." "And the baby?" Peter pointed a shaking finger at her stomach. "If you're 7 months pregnant, and we separated 5 months ago, that baby is mine." A wicked glint appeared in Peter's eyes. This was his leverage. "If that's my child, I have rights. I have custody rights. He saw the fear flicker in Michael's face for the first time. Dominic laughed. It was a dark, dry sound. "You want to claim this child, Calloway?" Dominic asked. "If it's mine, absolutely." Peter puffed out his chest. "I'm a father. I deserve to be in the child's life." "Strange," Dominic mused. "Because according to the medical records Michael showed me, you had a vasectomy 4 years ago, without telling her." The crowd gasped again. Sienna turned to look at Peter, her mouth open. "You what?" Peter froze. He had done it. He didn't want kids ruining his lifestyle. He had told the doctor to keep it sealed. He never told Michael because he wanted to keep her hoping, keep her trying, so she'd stay busy while he fooled around. "How did you know that?" Peter whispered. "I know everything, Peter," Dominic said. "I have a file on you 3 inches thick. I know about the offshore accounts in the Caymans where you're hiding assets from the IRS. I know about the bribes you paid to the zoning commissioner for the Hudson Yards project." Dominic stepped closer, looming over Peter. And regarding the child, Dominic lowered his voice so only the immediate circle could hear. "We used a donor, a very specific, high IQ, athletic donor from a clinic in Switzerland. Michael wanted to be a mother. You denied her that. I gave her the world." "So it's not yours either?" Sienna asked Dominic, confused. "I adopted the child in utero," Dominic said. "On paper, by law, and by blood of the heart, I am the father. And if you ever try to come near my wife or my child, Peter, I will not just sue you. I will dismantle your life, brick by brick, until you are begging for a job at a gas station in New Jersey." Dominic straightened his tie. "Come, darling. The air in this corner is stagnant." He guided Michael away. Peter stood there, the room spinning. He looked at Harold Sterling. Harold was slowly backing away, looking at his phone, probably deleting Peter's number. "Peter!" Sienna hissed. "Did you really get a vasectomy? I've been off birth control for 3 months because you said you wanted a son." "Not now, Sienna," Peter snapped. "Don't you yell at me." She screamed, causing more heads to turn. But the night wasn't over. As Peter watched Michael and Dominic take their seats at the head table, the table reserved for royalty and heads of state, his phone buzzed. It was an email from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Subject: Urgent inquiry regarding Hudson Yards, zoning irregularities. Peter looked up at the head table. Dominic Rostover was raising a glass of water to him, a small, knowing smirk playing on his lips. The war hadn't just started. Peter had already lost. He just didn't know how bad the casualties would be yet. The morning after the Aurora Gala, the sun rose over Manhattan with a brilliance that mocked Peter Calloway's existence. He hadn't slept. He sat in his office at Calloway Holdings, staring at the Bloomberg terminal. The red arrows were everywhere. News of the SEC inquiry had leaked. It wasn't just a leak, it was a flood. Page 6 ran the headline, "Calloway Crash, Tycoon Humiliated by Billionaire Rival at Gala." But the Wall Street Journal had the headline that actually hurt. SEC probes Calloway Holdings for zoning fraud. Stock plummets, 18% in pre-market. "Peter, the phone hasn't stopped ringing." His assistant, a terrified 20-something named Greg, stammered from the doorway. "The investors from the Kensington Group are pulling out. They said the deal is void due to the morality clause in the preliminary contract." "Get them on the phone," Peter roared, throwing a crystal paperweight across the room. It shattered against the wall, leaving a dent in the mahogany paneling. "I tried. They've blocked our number." Peter sank into his leather chair. This was Dominic Rostover's doing. It had to be. The timing was too precise. The SEC email hitting his phone the exact moment Dominic toasted him. That was a calculated strike. His phone buzzed. It was Sienna. "We need to talk. I'm at the penthouse. Come home." Peter grabbed his jacket. He needed Sienna. Her face was his PR strategy. If he could show the world that his personal life was stable, that he was still the charming, successful man they envied, maybe he could stem the bleeding. He drove his Ferrari too fast down Fifth Avenue, ignoring the honks of taxis. When he burst into the penthouse, the place looked like a tornado had hit it. Suitcases were open on the floor. Clothes were strewn everywhere. Sienna was throwing boxes of shoes into a Louis Vuitton trunk. "Babe, what are you doing?" Peter asked, breathless. Sienna didn't look up. She was crying, her mascara running down her cheeks. "I'm leaving, Peter." "Leaving? Because of a little bad press?" "Sienna, this is just a bump in the road. I'll fix it. I always fix it." She spun around, holding a pregnancy test box in her hand. It was unopened. "It's not the press, Peter. It's the vasectomy," she screamed. "I've been trying to get pregnant for 3 months. I stopped taking jobs because I thought I'd be showing soon. I turned down a campaign with Gucci. And you're shooting blanks?" "Sienna, listen. No, you lied to me. You manipulated me." She zipped up the suitcase with a vicious yank. "And now? Now you're under investigation. I Googled Dominic Rostova. He doesn't lose, Peter. He destroys people. I'm not going down with your sinking ship." "You're nothing without me," Peter snarled, his charm evaporating. "I made you. You were a catalogue model before I put you on the red carpet." Sienna laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "And now I'm the fiancée of a fraud. My agent called. She said if I stay with you, I'll lose my contracts. You're toxic, Peter." She signaled to the door. 2 large men in movers' uniforms walked in and picked up her trunks. "Get out," Peter said, his voice shaking. "I'm going," Sienna said, slinging her Birkin bag over her shoulder. She stopped at the door. "Oh, and Peter. Michael was right. You are exhausting." The door slammed shut. Peter stood in the silence of his $10 million penthouse. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. He felt a burning in his chest. Rage. Pure, unadulterated rage. They thought they could break him? Dominic Rostova thought he could waltz in, steal his ex-wife, ruin his business, and drive away his fiancée? Peter Calloway was a street fighter in a suit. He knew where the bodies were buried. He pulled out his burner phone, the one he used for sensitive transactions. He dialed a number he hadn't used in 2 years. "It's me," Peter said into the receiver. "I need a job done. I need dirt on Dominic Rostova. I don't care how deep you have to dig. I want to know about his exes, his business dealings in Russia, his health records, and find out everything about that baby." "That's expensive, Mr. Calloway," a raspy voice replied. "Rostova is a ghost." "I'll pay double," Peter hissed. "Just bring me something I can use to kill him." 3 days later, Peter sat in a dim booth at a diner in New Jersey. He wore a baseball cap and sunglasses. His face was splashed across every tabloid in the city, but the headlines had shifted from his business failure to his desperate downfall. The private investigator, a man named Silas who smelled of stale tobacco, slid a manila envelope across the table. "You're not going to like this," Silas grunted. Peter tore the envelope open. He flipped through the photos. Photos of Dominic and Michael walking in Central Park. Photos of them looking at baby cribs. Photos of them laughing. "Where is the dirt?" Peter demanded. "Where are the mistresses, the illegal arms deals?" "Clean," Silas said. "The guy is squeaky clean. He pays his taxes. He donates millions to orphanages. He's a saint." "Nobody is a saint." Peter slammed his fist on the table. "What about the baby? The donor?" Silas pointed to a document at the bottom of the stack. That's the interesting part. I hacked the clinic records in Switzerland. It wasn't easy. Cost me a lot of favors. Peter scanned the document. His eyes widened. The donor, Peter whispered. It's not anonymous. Nope, Silas smirked. And it's not some random Swiss athlete. Peter read the name on the donor file. Dominic Rostova. Wait, Peter frowned. He said they used a donor because… Wait, if the donor is him, then it's his biological child. Why did they say it was a donor? Look at the date of the donation. Silas tapped the paper. 10 years ago, Rostova had cancer. He froze his sample before chemo. He's sterile now, but the sample? It was viable. Peter's mind raced. So it was Dominic's baby. Biologically. Michael hadn't just found a rich husband. She had found the father of her child. But that wasn't the leverage he needed. Keep looking, Peter said. There has to be something. There is one more thing, Silas said, leaning in. Sienna Vane. What about her? She was seen entering the Rostova building yesterday. Peter froze. Why? Rumor is she's trying to sell her story. My life with the monster. She's offering it to the highest bidder. But she went to Rostova first. Maybe to offer him information on you in exchange for immunity or money? Peter felt the blood rush to his head. Sienna was going to turn witness. She knew about the bribes. She was in the room when he took the calls. If she talked to Dominic's lawyers or the SEC, Peter wasn't just broke. He was going to prison. He had to stop her. Peter left the diner and drove back to the city. He needed to confront Sienna. He needed to scare her into silence. But as he pulled up to his office building, he saw the flashing lights. FBI, NYPD. They were swarming the entrance of Callaway Holdings. Agents were carrying out boxes of files. His employees were standing on the sidewalk, looking lost. And standing right there, talking to an agent with a silver badge, was Sienna. She pointed at Peter's car as he pulled up. The agent turned. He looked directly at Peter. He tapped his earpiece and started walking toward the car. Peter didn't think. He panicked. He threw the car into reverse, tires screeching, and sped away against traffic. Run! The thought consumed him. I have to get to the airport. I have the emergency cash in the safe at the Hamptons house. He merged onto the highway, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He dialed his lawyer. Voicemail. He dialed his offshore banker. Disconnected. He was alone. Then his phone rang. The screen displayed a restricted number. "Answer it," a voice said. It was Dominic Rostova. "You ruined my life," Peter screamed into the phone, weaving through traffic at 90 miles an hour. "You ruined your own life, Peter." Dominic's voice was calm, almost bored. "I just turned on the lights. The cockroaches did the rest." "I'm going to kill you," Peter spat. "No, you're not. You're going to pull over, because if you keep driving to the Hamptons, you'll find the police waiting for you. I own the security company that monitors your estate. We alerted the authorities the moment you breached the perimeter of the city." "Why are you doing this?" Peter sobbed, the adrenaline crashing into despair. "You have everything. Why bother with me?" "Because," Dominic said, his voice hardening, "Michael cried for a year because of you. She doubted her worth because of you. And I promised her that the man who made her cry would never have the power to hurt anyone ever again." "I'll make a deal," Peter begged. "I have info on other people. I can trade." "We don't want your deals, Peter. We want justice. Look in your rearview mirror." Peter looked up. Blue and red lights stretched across the horizon behind him. A helicopter chopped the air above. "Game over, Peter," Dominic said. The line went dead. The arrest of Peter Calloway was the most watched video on YouTube for a week. The dashcam footage showed him being pulled from his Ferrari, screaming about conspiracies, crying about his Armani suit getting ruined. He was denied bail. The judge, a stern woman who had clearly read the files Sienna provided, cited him as a massive flight risk. The trial took 6 months. It was a circus. Sienna took the stand. She wore a modest black dress, played the victim perfectly, and detailed every bribe, every illegal zoning shortcut, every hidden account. She admitted to being complicit, but claimed she was under his spell and afraid of his temper. She got a plea deal, probation and community service. She walked away with a book deal worth $2 million. Peter sat at the defense table, watching his life being dissected. He looked gaunt. His hair was thinning. The jail jumpsuit didn't fit. But the worst day wasn't the verdict. The worst day was when Michael came to visit. It was 3 weeks before sentencing. Peter was sitting in the visitation room, behind the thick glass. He expected his lawyer. Instead, Michael walked in. She looked radiant. She was no longer pregnant. She held a baby carrier. She sat down and picked up the phone. Peter picked up his side slowly. "Why are you here?" Peter rasped. "To gloat?" "No," Michael said softly. "I came to say goodbye. Properly this time." She turned the baby carrier so he could see. Sleeping inside was a baby boy with a tuft of silver blonde hair and eyes that Peter knew, even closed, were Dominic's. "His name is Gabriel," Michael said. "He's perfect." Peter looked at the child. He felt a pang of something strange. Not regret for the child, he never really wanted kids, but regret for the life that child represented. Stability, love, legacy, things he had traded for a penthouse and a model who sold him out. "Dominic is a good father," Michael said, stroking the baby's cheek. "He wakes up for every feeding. He sings to him in Russian." "Is he here?" Peter asked, looking around nervously. "He's outside. He didn't want to upset you." "Upset me?" Peter laughed bitterly. "He put me in here. You broke the law, Peter. You stole from people. You ruined families with those eviction schemes in Hudson Yards. Dominic just gave the evidence to the people who needed to see it." She looked him in the eyes. "I used to hate you," she said. "When you left me, I thought I was dying. I thought I was ugly, stupid, worthless. But looking at you now, I just feel sorry for you." "I don't want your pity," Peter sneered, though his lip quivered. "It's not pity for who you are," she said, standing up. "It's pity for who you could have been. You had a wife who loved you. You had a talent for business. You could have been happy. But you were so hungry for more that you starved yourself of what mattered." She adjusted the baby's blanket. "I won't come again, Peter. I just wanted you to know. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I'm too happy to carry the weight of hating you anymore." She hung up the phone. Peter watched her walk away. He placed his hand on the glass. "Maddie," he whispered. She didn't turn back. The steel door clanged shut. 5 years later. The sun over the Côte d'Azur didn't just shine. It anointed the landscape with gold. The Rostova estate, a sprawling 17th-century chateau nestled in the hills above Cannes, was a fortress of lavender and limestone. Michael stood on the limestone terrace, the warm French breeze tugging at the hem of her white linen dress. She held a cup of tea, looking out over the Mediterranean Sea, which glittered like a sheet of crushed sapphires in the distance. At 32, Michael didn't just look recovered. She looked reconstructed. The nervous, apologetic woman who used to hunch her shoulders to take up less space was gone. In her place was a woman who stood with the stillness of a queen who knew her borders were secure. Down in the manicured gardens, the sound of laughter broke the silence. Gabriel, now a boisterous 5-year-old with Dominic's silver-blonde hair and Michael's soft chin, was chasing a golden retriever named Ajax through the hedges. "Careful, Garbo!" Dominic's voice boomed from the patio below. "Ajax is faster than you. Flank him!" Michael smiled, watching her husband. Dominic Rostova, the terrifying Iron Tsar of the defense industry, was currently on his hands and knees, pretending to be a bear for their 2-year-old daughter, Isabella. He was wearing a t-shirt that had a smear of strawberry jam on the shoulder. He had never looked more handsome. Their life was a masterpiece of curated peace. Rostova Dynamics had pivoted under Michael's influence, moving 40% of its operations into green energy and global disaster relief. They weren't just the richest couple in Europe, they were the most beloved. But peace is a fragile ecosystem. The heavy oak doors of the terrace opened, and Henri, their head of security, a man who looked like he carved statues out of granite for a living, stepped out. He held a secure satellite phone. "Mr. Rostova," Henri said, his voice low. "It's the lawyers in New York. The review board made a decision." Dominic stood up, dusting the grass off his knees. The playfulness vanished from his eyes, replaced instantly by the cold, calculating glint that had terrified boardrooms for decades. He took the phone. Michael didn't move, but her grip on the teacup tightened. She knew what day it was. Dominic listened for 30 seconds. He didn't say a word. He just nodded once and handed the phone back to Henri. He walked up the stone stairs to the terrace, taking Michael's hand. His thumb rubbed over her knuckles, a grounding rhythm. "He's out," Dominic said softly. "Parole was granted this morning. Good behavior. Overcrowding initiatives." Peter Calloway was free. Michael felt a phantom shiver, a ghost of a feeling she hadn't felt in half a decade. Anxiety. Not for her safety, but for the disruption of the equilibrium she had fought so hard to build. "Where will he go?" she asked. "Nowhere that matters," Dominic assured her. "I've ensured that. His assets are gone. His reputation is ash. He is banned from trading securities by the SEC for life. He is a felon with a bankruptcy record. He is just a man, Maddie." "I know," she whispered. "It's just strange, thinking of him breathing the same air as us again." "He isn't breathing our air," Dominic said, pulling her into his chest, the scent of expensive cologne and strawberry jam surrounding her. "He's breathing the exhaust fumes of the world we left behind. We have the gala tonight. The Prime Minister is coming. Focus on that. Peter Calloway is yesterday's weather." The Collins Correctional Facility, upstate New York. 4,000 miles away, the weather was not golden. It was a weeping, grey drizzle that turned the concrete walls of the prison into a slick, oppressive monolith. Peter Calloway stood in the processing room. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and unwashed bodies. He was 39 years old, but he looked 50. His once thick hair was thinning rapidly at the temples, and the stress of 5 years in a medium-security facility had carved deep ravines into his face. "Turn around," the guard grunted. Peter turned. He stripped off the orange jumpsuit. It was the only piece of clothing he had worn for 1,125 days. He was handed a plastic bag containing the clothes he had been arrested in. A pair of designer jeans that were now 2 sizes too big for his gaunt frame, and a cashmere sweater that had been moth-eaten in storage. He dressed in silence. The cashmere felt wrong against his skin. Itchy, foreign. He went to put on his shoes. They were his Italian loafers, leather so soft it felt like butter. But the soles had dried out and cracked. As he shoved his foot in, the heel split. "Hurry it up, Calloway," the guard barked. I got real criminals to process." Peter grabbed his clear plastic bag of belongings, a toothbrush, a cheap digital watch, $40 in gate money, and a bus ticket to Queens. The heavy steel gates buzzed, a sound that had haunted his nightmares. Clank, hiss. The door swung open. Peter stepped out into the prison parking lot. He expected something. Maybe a paparazzi van, a lawyer, an old friend like Harold Sterling, waiting with a sympathetic smile and a job offer? There was nothing. Just an empty asphalt lot and a stray cat picking at a discarded sandwich wrapper. He walked to the bus stop at the end of the road. The rain soaked his sweater instantly. He stood there for an hour, shivering. When the Greyhound bus finally hissed to a halt, the driver barely looked at him. Peter took a seat in the back, near the toilet. The bus smelled of diesel and stale urine. As the vehicle lurched forward, merging onto the highway toward New York City, Peter pressed his forehead against the cold glass. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. It was a list of contacts he had memorized, phone numbers of men who owed him favors, men he had made rich. "I'm Peter Calloway," he whispered to his reflection in the dark window. "I'm the king of Hudson Yards. I just need a suit. One suit, and I can talk my way back in." But the man in the reflection just looked tired. New York City. 48 hours later. The city was louder than he remembered. The digital billboards in Times Square were brighter, faster, more aggressive. Everyone was looking down at their phones, wearing wireless earbuds, moving with a frenetic energy that made Peter feel dizzy. He was staying at the last stop, a halfway house in Jamaica, Queens. His room was shared with 3 other men, a recovering heroin addict, a grand theft auto felon, and a man who screamed in his sleep about spiders. Peter sat on the edge of his stained mattress. He had spent his $40 on a burner phone and a Metro card. He had been making calls since 6 a.m. "Sterling Capital, how may I direct your call?" "Harold Sterling, please. Tell him it's Peter. Peter Calloway." Click. He dialed again. "Kensington Group." "Yes, I'm looking for Mr. Vance. It's Peter Calloway. I have a business "Mr. Calloway," a sharp female voice interrupted. "Mr. Vance has a restraining order against you pending any contact. If you call this office again, we will notify your parole officer. Do not call here." Click. Peter stared at the cheap phone. They were terrified of him, or worse, they were disgusted by him. He was radioactive. He needed a drink. He needed to think. He put on his ruined loafers and walked out into the humid Queens afternoon. He found a dive bar that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 80s. He ordered a whiskey with his last $6. On the television above the bar, Entertainment Tonight was playing, and in publishing news, the bubbly host announced, Sienna Vane is releasing the sequel to her bombshell memoir, The Glass Tower. The former model-turned-advocate is expected to sign books at Barnes & Noble on Fifth Avenue today. Vane claims the new book details the psychological torture she endured while engaged to the disgraced tycoon, Peter Calloway. Peter choked on his whiskey. Sienna. She was selling a sequel. She had made millions painting him as a monster, while she had been the one enjoying the fruits of his crimes right alongside him. She was wearing the diamonds he bought with the bribe money while she cried on Oprah's couch. A white-hot rage, familiar and intoxicating, surged through him. He needed to see her. He needed to look her in the eye and tell her she was a fraud. If he could just confront her, maybe he could expose her. Maybe he could get a cut of that money. He ran out of the bar. He jumped the turnstile at the subway station, old habits of entitlement dying hard, and took the E-train to Manhattan. Fifth Avenue. The line for the book signing stretched around the block. Women in expensive coats, clutching copies of The Glass Tower, chatted excitedly. Peter stood across the street. He looked out of place. His sweater was stained, his hair unkempt, his face unshaven. He looked like exactly what he was, a desperate ex-con. He saw the black SUV pull up. Security guards with earpieces swarmed the sidewalk. The door opened, and Sienna stepped out. She looked incredible. She was wearing a white Chanel power suit, ironic, considering white was the color of innocence. Her hair was a blonde halo. She waved to the screaming fans, blowing kisses. Peter began to cross the street. He didn't have a plan. He just moved on instinct. "Sienna!" he shouted. The noise of the crowd swallowed his voice. He pushed through a group of tourists. "Sienna, look at me!" He broke through the line of fans. He was 10 feet away from her. Sienna turned. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She locked eyes with him. For 5 years, Peter had imagined this moment. He thought she would look fearful. He thought she would look guilty. Instead, she looked annoyed, like he was a stain on her carpet. "Security," she said, her voice calm and imperious. 2 massive guards intercepted Peter before he could take another step. One of them shoved him hard in the chest. "Back off, pal," the guard growled. "I know her," Peter screamed, flailing as they grabbed his arms. "She's my fiancée. I made her. You hear me, Sienna? You were nothing. You were a catalogue girl." Sienna paused at the entrance of the bookstore. She turned back to the crowd, who were now filming the scene with their phones. She put on a sad, brave face, a perfect acting performance. "It's okay, everyone," Sienna said, loud enough for the cameras. That is the man I wrote about. Please don't hurt him. He's clearly unwell. This is just another reminder of why we need to support victims of narcissistic abuse." The crowd cheered for her bravery. "You liar!" Peter spat, struggling against the guards. "Tell them about the accounts in the Caymans. You signed the papers too." "Get him out of here," the guard muttered, dragging Peter toward the curb. Sienna didn't look at him again. She turned on her heel, her white suit gleaming, and vanished into the warmth of the bookstore to sign autographs for $30 a pop. Peter was thrown onto the pavement. His knee scraped against the concrete. The paparazzi flashed a few pictures of him, sprawled in the gutter. Not because he was famous, but because he was a pathetic curiosity. The fallen king. He lay there for a moment, the wind knocked out of him. A tourist walked by and dropped a quarter next to his hand. "Get yourself some coffee, buddy," the tourist said. Peter stared at the quarter. It was the ultimate indignity. The Rostover estate, France. That evening, the gala was in full swing. The terrace was lit by thousands of fairy lights strung through the olive trees. A string quartet played Debussy. Waiters moved like ghosts, offering champagne and caviar. Michael stood at the edge of the crowd, wearing a gown of deep emerald silk. She was watching Dominic speak to the French Minister of Culture. She felt a vibration in her clutch. She stepped away into the shadow of an archway and checked her phone. It was a news alert. New York Post. Video. Disgraced Tycoon. Peter Calloway causes scene at ex-fiancée's book signing. Homeless and deranged? Michael clicked the video. She watched the shaky footage of Peter screaming, being dragged away, looking small and broken. She watched Sienna play the victim. She felt a wave of nausea. Not hate, just a profound sadness for the waste of a human life. "Everything all right?" Dominic appeared beside her. He held 2 flutes of vintage champagne. He glanced at her phone screen, saw the headline, and his expression didn't change. "He did it to himself, Michael," Dominic said quietly. "He had a choice today. He could have gone to a library. He could have looked for a job in construction. He could have started over humbly. Instead, he went to Fifth Avenue to chase a ghost." "I know," Michael sighed. locking her phone and putting it away. It's just, we were married. I loved him once. It's hard to see someone you loved turn into dust. You didn't love him, Dominic corrected her gently, handing her the glass. You loved the potential of him. You loved the man he promised to be. That man never existed. The man in that video? That is who he always was. You just finally have the right lighting to see it. Michael looked up at Dominic. His eyes were dark and steady, a harbour in the storm. You're right, she said. She took a sip of champagne. I'm ready to go back inside. Wait, Dominic said. One more thing. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. It's not an anniversary, Michael smiled. What is this? I bought the building, Dominic said casually. Which building? The one on Fifth Avenue, the one with the bookstore, and the old Callaway Holdings tower next to it. Michael's mouth fell open. Dominic, why? I'm turning the Callaway Tower into the new headquarters for the Rostova Foundation's Second Chance initiative. It will provide housing and job training for single mothers and victims of financial abuse. He opened the box. Inside was a simple, old-fashioned iron key. And the penthouse? Dominic grinned. I'm gutting it. We're turning it into an indoor hydroponic garden for the community kitchen. I thought it would be poetic. Where he used to look down on the city, we will grow food to feed it. Tears pricked Michael's eyes. It was the ultimate victory. Not destroying Peter, but overwriting his legacy of greed with life. You are incredible, she whispered. I am simply a man who loves his wife. Dominic kissed her forehead. Come, the Prime Minister is waiting for a toast. They turned and walked back into the light, leaving the darkness of the past outside where it belonged. Queens, New York. Midnight. The rain had returned. Peter sat on a bench under the overhang of a closed bodega. He was soaked to the bone. He had nowhere to go. The halfway house had a curfew, and he had missed it. He was locked out for the night. He pulled the wet newspaper out of the trash can beside him to use as a blanket. As he unfolded it, the damp pages stuck together. He peeled them apart. There, in the society section, was a photo taken just hours ago in France. It showed Michael and Dominic dancing. They were looking at each other with a look so intimate, so complete, that it felt like an intrusion just to see it. The headline read, The Golden Age of Rostova. Billions pledged for new hope. Peter traced Michael's face with his dirty thumb. She looked younger than she did when she was 25. She looked free. He looked down at his own hands, shaking, stained, empty. He remembered the night at the Plaza Hotel, the moment the doors opened, the moment he thought he was the king of the world, 5 minutes before the guillotine fell. I had it, he whispered to the empty street. I had her. A rat skittered across his shoe. Peter didn't flinch. He just pulled the newspaper over his head to block out the streetlights. He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. Only the math. The relentless, unforgiving arithmetic of his life. He had traded a diamond for a sequin. He had traded a legacy for a headline. And now, the world kept spinning, vibrant and loud and rich, while Peter Callaway simply ceased to matter. He curled into a ball on the hard wood of the bench, listening to the rain wash the city clean, knowing it would never be enough to wash him. And that is the tragic, satisfying end of Peter Callaway. He chased gold and lost the diamond that was already in his hand. It's a brutal reminder that when you trade loyalty for vanity, you end up bankrupt in the only currency that matters, love. What do you think? Did Peter deserve a harsher punishment, or is living as a nobody the ultimate revenge? And what about Sienna? Was she a victim or a villain? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of karma, revenge, and redemption, please smash that like button, share this story with a friend who needs some tea, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on that notification bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching. And remember, be careful who you step on your way up, because you might meet them on your way down.